Hello and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Emma.
I'm Nandini.
Nandini is joining us on the pod today to talk about legal action that's been launched by the ACCC against Coles and Woolworths this week.
Yesterday, the consumer watchdog, the ACCC, dropped a bit of a bombshell. It's taking Coles and Woolworths to the federal court in two separate cases. It's accused the supermarket giants of unlawfully using discount pricing claims to mislead consumers. We'll take you through the allegations against Coles and Woolworths, how the retailers have responded, and what this could mean for consumers in today's deep dive.
We've been hearing about supermarkets in the news cycle for what seems like forever, if I'm honest, from price gouging claims to more inquiries than I can count, including one led by the ACCC. Now, that's the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. But we're talking about legal action in the federal court this week. This is a new twist and turn in the ever-evolving story about Australia's supermarket industry. Now, before we get stuck in, I thought it'd be worth clarifying what the ACCC actually is. It's a watchdog. Its job is not to monitor or regulate the prices of groceries, but rather represent the consumer's best interests, look out for the rights of Australian customers. So to avoid any confusion, this week's legal action is separate from the ongoing inquiries. But Nandini, what is at the centre of this court case against Coles and Woolies?
So on Monday, we found out that the ACCC is suing Coles and Woolworths for misleading consumers. It claims both the retailers used deceptive and unlawful price tactics to make hundreds of products look as though they were on sale, when in reality the price either hasn't changed or actually went up.
So before we get into the specifics of the legal proceedings, let's zoom out a bit and look at Coles and Woolworths more broadly. What do we need to know about their dominance, particularly in the context of 2024?
So both the supermarkets, Coles and Woolies, dominate about 2/3 of the supermarket sector in Australia. In the 2023-2024 financial year, so the one that just passed, Coles reported a net profit of $1.1 billion.
Wow.
That's a 2% increase from the previous year. And Woolworths reported a $1.7 billion profit for the same period. That's actually down 0.6% from the year before, but still major profits.
Yeah, over $1 billion each. This market control, the dominance that Coles and Woolies have, is sort of at the centre of all of the ongoing inquiries and a lot of the attention into supermarkets and anti-competitive behaviour.
Yeah, and that report is expected to be handed down in February next year. So launching these lawsuits comes at quite a tense time for the supermarket industry, where they're facing a lot of public scrutiny for the handling of discounts, promotions and prices. So
Coles and Woolies in this latest kind of action or these federal court cases, they're facing separate lawsuits. In fact, the ACCC specified that this legal action isn't necessarily directly tied to anti-competitive behaviour, but it has been argued that pricing unfairly or price gouging is in and of itself unfair to customers. We're talking about the individual retailers and how they've allegedly deceived customers through those pricing tactics. There is a common thread, even though they're two separate cases, and that's about price spiking and giving products the appearance of being on special, even if they aren't. So, Nandini, what is price spiking? How does it work?
So price spiking is when products become more expensive for a brief period of time before they're reduced to a price that is more expensive or the same as before. You know, when you go to the supermarket and you see the bright, colourful price tag, it might say prices dropped, it might say down, depending where you go. It draws your attention to something like butter, for example, and it might say was $4, now $3.
Okay, so when you go to the supermarket, especially a really generic product like butter, you kind of might quickly scan the whole selection. Something might stand out to you because it's got a big colourful docket and you think, okay, well, I'm saving $1 on that, so I'll grab that one.
Yeah, and it makes you think that you're getting a discount, as it should. So let's look at Woolies first. The ACCC analysed the prices of hundreds of grocery items available at Woolies between September 2021 and May 2023. So we're looking at a 20-month period here. The ACCC is alleging that Woolies was using misleading discount pricing claims on over 260 products. This included a range of staple items, like I was saying butter, but also cereal, pet food, coffee, dishwashing liquid, and sanitary products.
So I think I know what you mean about this concept of price spiking, but did the ACCC give us any examples of real-world evidence against this going on at Woolies?
Yeah, so we'll look at Woolies first. The ACCC did give an example of Oreo prices. Love a good Oreo. Dunkin' Toast.
Vegan friendly too.
So they tracked the cost of an average pack of original Oreos at Woolies for around 700 days between 2020 and 2022, so roughly 2-year period. A standard pack of Oreos was $3.50. Sounds reasonable. Then we see this jump to $5 a packet in November 2022. That lasts for 22 days, under a month, just before Woolies goes to drop the cost of Oreos to $4.50.
So Oreos at Woolies, we're talking $3.50 for about 2 years. Then the price jumps to $5. Then after 20-something days, it goes to $4.50.
Yeah, so that's $1 higher than the original price. But the short-term increase there made it seem like we were getting a discount as a consumer.
I get it.
At least that's what the ACCC is alleging here.
I see. Okay, so what about Coles?
Pretty similar situation there. The ACCC also analysed the prices of hundreds of Coles products from February 2022 to May 2023. So now we're looking at a 15-month period compared to 20 months for Woolies. The consumer watchdog has alleged that Coles used misleading prices across 245 products, including Band-Aids, shapes, love shapes, butter, again, throat lozenges, and paper towels.
So in both cases, a really broad range of everyday kind of supermarket staple items. You've got about 250 instances, the ACCC alleges, at each supermarket of this price spiking. Do we have an example for Coles like the Oreos example?
Yeah. So for Coles, the ACCC has looked at honey and lemon strepsils, which was sold for $5.50 for around 2 years. In October 2022, those prices rose to $7 a pack, and a month later, strepsils were labelled with the down tag at a price of $6 a pack.
Okay, so $5.50 to $7 to $6. So we end up 50 cents higher than the strepsils were originally sold at a month earlier.
Yeah. So this example of strepsils and the example of Oreos is what the ACCC is using to accuse Woolies for using its prices dropped tags and Coles for using its down labels to unlawfully mislead consumers. Chairperson for the ACCC, Gina Cass-Gottlieb, addressed a press conference yesterday, and here's a grab of what she had to say.
The price discounts as promoted were misleading because the discount was illusory. In times of cost of living pressures, it is critical that all pricing claims and price discount claims are accurate. This is serious conduct that is of great concern to us that affected many consumers, with millions of products sold subject to this practice.
She also said that in many cases, Coles and Woolies, quote, implemented the temporary price spike for the purpose of establishing a higher was price.
So the ACCC, just to recap, are kind of alleging here that these price increases followed by decreases are calculated ways for the supermarket to, in the long term, make something cost more, make it more expensive, but make a consumer believe that they're getting a good deal. So there's kind of two pillars to that. It's about increasing prices, but also psychologically kind of messing with the consumer in terms of what the allegations are arguing.
Yeah, I mean, I love a good bargain. If something has a price drop tag, I'm going to buy it.
It can be powerful. So Coles and Woolies are now facing these federal court proceedings for allegedly breaching consumer law because the ACCC says this behaviour is illegal. What kind of penalties is it seeking?
So Cass-Gottlieb didn't specify a number, but she did say that the ACCC are after, quote, significant cost penalties. Another interesting penalty is a community service order, which really caught my eye. It would basically require Coles and Woolworths to fund a registered charity that provides meals or food to people in need, which is a pretty relevant cause in this case.
Yes, that is really interesting because I suppose, the ACCC being a government agency, huge financial penalties are going to hit those supermarkets, but they make billion-dollar profits. So, kind of thinking outside the box of ways that they can be held to account and actually do good for the community at the same time. Has either supermarket responded to these proceedings? What have Coles and Woolies said?
So they've both issued a statement. We'll start with Woolies. They said that they will, quote, carefully review the claims made by the ACCC. And their CEO, Amanda Bardwell, said, quote, we remain committed to offering many ways for customers to save at the checkout. Meanwhile, Coles have made it pretty clear that it, quote, intends to defend the proceedings. Coles said the ACCC's allegations, quote, relate to a period of significant cost inflation in 2022 to 2023. The supermarket said it faced cost price increases from suppliers at the time, and that basically required them, arguably, to increase the prices of their products on their shelves.
Okay. So to recap everything we've learnt so far, the ACCC says Coles and Woolies increased prices for a short period of time, then dropped them to make it seem like products were reduced or discounted, and that is in breach of consumer law. Now, as we've mentioned, this does come amid a number of inquiries, but to add a little bit more fuel to the supermarket fire, there was another development in this ongoing supermarket saga yesterday, and I'm talking about a code of conduct. We got an update on that coinciding with the ACCC announcement. What is the news there?
So yeah, a big start to the week for the supermarket sector. In April, there was a formal review for supermarkets, and basically that review recommended a mandatory food and grocery code of conduct. These are industry regulations that could lead to multi-million-dollar penalties for serious breaches. Woolworths said it supported this mandatory code, and Coles said it was considering the report findings, but that they were, quote, committed to supporting a healthy and sustainable grocery sector. Then, over in June, the government said it was committed to implementing the code. And now, after a few months, we've heard from the Prime Minister that the government will introduce a draft code to Parliament by the end of the year.
So a draft mandatory code for the grocery sector. It is worth mentioning here that there is a voluntary code that's been in place, but the Prime Minister has said, it clearly doesn't go far enough. We need to intervene. More needs to be done. What will these reforms mean for the supermarkets in practical terms?
So here's what the government has said it will look to legislate. Supermarkets could face one of 3 fines for major breaches of the revamped mandatory code. That will be whichever is the largest amount of either of the following. We have $10 million, 3 times the value of any benefit gained from a breach, or 10% of sales in the year before the breach. So out of those 3 options, which one has the highest amount?
And so in the case of supermarket retailers who have billion-dollar profits and sales margins, those fines could be into the millions or even billions of dollars.
Yeah, major.
So some pretty significant penalties on the table there. But back to the federal court proceedings against Coles and Woolworths. Did Anthony Albanese comment on that?
So Prime Minister Albanese said he welcomed the ACCC's, quote, standing with the supermarket shoppers, and he called the allegations against Coles and Woolworths serious and said if they're true, it would be completely unacceptable. He said, quote, advertised discounts need to be genuine. Specials need to be real because household budgets are tight.
There you go, some strong words from the PM and a lot going on in the supermarket space. As we've learned over the last couple of years, it's certainly not an issue that's going away. Nandini, thank you so much for taking us through that one today. So helpful.
Thank you.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, if you learned something new, why not send it on to a friend? Don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you listen to The Daily Aus, or if you're watching over on our YouTube channel. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow, but until then, have a great day.